and neural models for speech recognition. Um, so this is where we stopped at last class. Um, so until now we have seen some models which deal only with static variabilities in speech, that is simple Gaussian model, Gaussian mixture model, and so on. And there we have assumed that the data samples are independent and identically distributed, but those models don't take care of the dynamic variabilities, that is the variabilities that happen over time. So, and those are most important variations, so we have to capture those variations. Um, so in that case, we can't assume the data to be IID. So we should assume it to have some dependency over the temporal axis. So such dependencies are called as Markovian dependency or Markovian assumption, which means that the present sample, the present data sample, depends upon some past one or two samples. If it depends upon only the past sample, it is first order Markovian. Past two samples, then it is second order Markovian, and so on. So in most cases, first order Markovian assumption itself works well. And I have told some story about USA and USSR during Cold War and why Markov models are more important in that case. And we have seen that hidden Markov model is one such model which captures the dynamic variability. And in this class, we'll see how it works and how it is represented. So today's class, the agenda is before going to the hidden Markov model, we'll see what is a probabilistic graphical model based representation. I've told you that any system which has some random variables, it is of utmost importance to characterize the joint density of all the random variables. That is a golden rule. This probabilistic graphical and okay, those expressions are will be like okay, exponential power minus x minus mu square. It's a big complicated expression. This probabilistic graphical model will specify the joint density in terms of graphs, okay, in terms of nice pictures which have some nodes and some edges connecting to it. And there are two ways to represent a graphical model. You know graphs, right? It contains some nodes and there will be some edges connecting the nodes, so on. Okay. And if the graph is, if the edges are directed, something like this, then those kind of networks are called as Bayesian networks. And if it is not directed, you don't have any arrow mark, then they are Markov random fields. And why this and we'll see some examples of directed graphical models in this class, and undirected models we'll see after some 6 or 7 classes when we deal with restricted Boltzmann machine and so on. Because to deal with those things we need, because those Markov random fields and Bayesian networks, they are not new. They were developed during 1920s, 1930s when statistical physics came into picture, when people like Einstein and Max Planck and those people started working on it. So there we'll see about configuration of an atom and how it determines the density of the joint density of all the particles based on the free energy of the atoms and so on. So those things will deal later in the class. And some models are Ising models. Okay, there is a model called Ising model which deals with, that is one more form of Markov random field, which deals with dipole moment of the atoms in a system. So those things will deal later. In this class we'll see only on Bayesian network. So and later after that we'll see what is Markov chain, and then I'll introduce hidden Markov model and what are the parameters associated with hidden Markov model. As you know, in Gaussian we have mean and covariance, and in Gaussian mixture model we have weights, mean of each mixture and each component, and covariance of each component. Likewise in hidden Markov model also there are some parameters. It's a parametric model, so we'll see what are those parameters. and given some data, how do we estimate the likelihood of the data coming from that model, from that HMM model? And there is a famous algorithm called forward-backward algorithm. Through that, using that algorithm, we can easily calculate the likelihood. I'll tell you why. I have created some good pictures explaining how forward-backward algorithms are actually useful, and later we'll see about the estimation of those parameters of HMM model from the given examples. And as you know that hidden Markov model, the name itself has hidden, so some variables are latent. So we have to use expectation maximization procedure. And in case of GMM, the EM procedure is just a simple EM. But if you solve this EM procedure for HMM, then that procedure is called Baum-Welch procedure, because they first formulated this, and with maximum likelihood case. But the same procedure can be extended for a map case also. That is called map Baum-Welch. Okay. So apart from that, the procedure, just apart from the name, the procedure is entirely same. Okay. So we'll go through the probabilistic graphical models first. So PGMs are just a way to visualize the random variables associated with a model in a nice figure. Okay. So it has some nodes which denotes the random variables associated with the experiment, and edges define the edges will tell you the dependency of the random variables, dependency between the random variables. It tells that okay, these two nodes are connected by a directed edge, and if it's pointing downwards, then x has some effect on y. X causes y to do something like that. So this is called cause and effect. So this way of directed graphical representation are Bayesian networks. Okay, so in this class we'll look only on these directed graphs, that is Bayesian networks. As I told, I'll talk about undirected graphs later, after some 6-7 lectures. So these are some examples of directed graphs, and I'll tell you what these things actually represent. We'll look at the first graph. So there is a connection from A to B pointing towards B, which means that the edge denotes a conditional density of the random variable, which means what is the value of B given some value of A. Okay, so that is what that edge denotes. And whenever you have free nodes which don't have any dependency, then you have to have the marginal of that density along with that. So this is what the first graph represents, which is nothing but P of AB. Okay. Now, what about the second one? So there is a arrow pointing towards A, which means B has some effect on A. So probability of A given B, and B node is a free node, so you need to have the marginal of that. So that is what the second one denotes. And similarly here also we have A that depends on B and C, and B depends only on C, and C doesn't have any dependency, or it's a free node, so you need to have its marginal. So this is what it represents. And similarly, in the last case, we have arrow pointing towards A, which means A has dependency on C, and B has dependency on C, and P of C. Okay, so we'll look at these two graphs. This is like a simplest form of representation of this graph. See, here all the dependencies are included. That is whatever the dependency between A and B and C. Okay, everything is modeled jointly. Okay, here there is no independence assumption or something. But in the fourth graph, given the value of C, A and B are independent. That is what it means. So you can see that, okay, given the value of C, A and B are independent. So this gets split. A and B are independent. So that's why we have this term boiling down to P of A given C. Okay. So this is called as conditional independence. Okay. So there are see here it's 3 variable case. It can be easily handled. But what if you have thousands of random variables? Because in speech recognition and all this thing, you will have not even thousands, okay, 10,000, 20,000 variables will be there. So in that case, you have to model the joint density of all those 20,000, 10,000 variables, okay, and they are continuous. No. Even if it is discrete, it blows away, blows out. Okay. So if it is continuous, then it's much more complicated. So what we do is we make some assumption. Given something, okay, if I can find the independence between some of the variables associated with that experiment, then it is a bit more easier to model. You can think of the simplicity of a graphical model, or how we model the system in this way. How many number of edges we have will tell you how complicated the system is. If it has lesser number of edges, the system is modeled in a less complicated way. So that's how you should interpret it. I'll tell you some intuitive example. If you want to talk about a person's relation between a person's height and his knowledge, then you can see that, okay, a baby which is very short and the baby has less knowledge, and if the baby is grown, okay, if he's like 6th class or something, he'll have some knowledge. If he has grown tall like me, okay, I'll have a bit more knowledge on this thing. And so the height of the person and his knowledge are correlated, okay, so they are dependent. But if I tell you the age of the person, that is C, given the age of the person, the knowledge and what I was telling, height, okay, they are dependent. You can split it out. Height by age, knowledge by age, because I know the age of the person. So which means that one dependency is already taken care of. I know if the baby is 6 months old, okay, it will not have knowledge at all. But there are cases where, okay, even a person of the same height, if he's 6 foot tall or 5 foot tall, who's 30 years old, will have a different knowledge level and so on. So just to illustrate that, okay, given age, the height and the knowledge factor can be made independent. Likewise, in speech also, given some certain variable, if we know that some of the variables in question are independent, then we can split this and we can remove one of the edge from the graph and make the model a bit more simpler. So that is what is explained in this. These are for simpler models. We have proper random variables, okay, A, B, C, and so on. But when we talked about GMM, we had latent random variables. In that, we can't observe some of the random variables. Those are Z's, what we call, and some variables are observable. Those are X. In GMM, the Z denotes from which component of the mixture the data has come from. So we have two such variables, two random variables now. One is the data variable X, and the other is the hidden random variable Z. Okay, and these are the parameters of the model. In GMM, it will be W, mu, and sigma m's. So as I told you earlier, you have the theta parameter and the theta will generate the hidden random variable, and this in turn generates the data. Okay. Now, this also models the joint density, the density of the data p of z x given theta. Okay. So this also depends on, x also depends on theta. So, but there are multiple nodes, multiple edges in this. Okay. In previous cases, we don't have p of z given theta, p of x given z, and p of x given theta, and all this thing. Why? Because we have to by definition, we have to marginalize all the latent variables associated with that graph. That is what the model actually represents. But it is by definition. So here the latent variable is z. So what we have is p of x given theta, p of x given z, and p of z given theta, and you have to marginalize this over the latent variable. Here there is only one latent variable, which is z, and if you marginalize, you can see that this term will vanish away, and you have only p of x given theta. Okay. And similarly, we can do it if you have, this is in a ML setting and this is in a map setting. Now we treated theta as a constant. Here theta is a variable, and that variable has a parameter, hyperparameter lambda, as we saw in the map case. You remember map, right? So we have some parameter, and we assume prior for the conjugate prior for that parameter, and that prior will have some hyperparameters. Okay. So those hyperparameters are lambda. So now in this case, we have p of x given z, p of x given theta, then p of z given theta, then p of theta given lambda. Okay. Now if we integrate this over, now there are two variables. Okay. One is z and the other is theta. So now if you marginalize over z and theta, if theta is continuous, then instead of summation you can integrate it. Okay. So on and so on. So you will get p of x given theta in this case. So that's what these two models represent. Okay. So whatever the models we have seen are under the class of Bayesian networks, as it has directed graphs. And hidden Markov model is an example of Bayesian network. And to be specific, it is an example of dynamic Bayesian network, because there are dynamics involved in the system. Because it is not just a constant, it is not a static system. Okay. So that's why we call, and we'll see why it is like that. So before going to hidden Markov model, we'll see what a Markov model is. Markov models are characterized by the state and the temporal, what do you call, the discreteness in time, you can tell. If it is continuous over time, there are four kind of models. One is continuous time, discrete state, continuous time, continuous state, discrete time, continuous state, and discrete time, discrete state. Okay. So there are four kinds of model, and here, where is this? Here we'll be dealing with discrete time, discrete state. These are much more complicated ones. Okay, like random walks and other stuff. Okay, you can in physics these other three models will come into picture. When you talk about electron movement over a conductor or some material, these kind of models will characterize it properly. But in our case, okay, we'll stick with only discrete time and discrete state, because this is very simple. We have some finite set of states which are finitely, it is a countably finite set, and we are looking at the system at some discrete time instance. So such kind of models are called Markov chains. Okay, when the state is discrete and when the time is discrete, they are called as Markov chain. So it is a dynamical system which models the state of the system over time. Okay, I'll and the change is nothing but implies the Markovian property. Okay, if it depends upon, if the present state of the system depends only on one of the previous state, that is only the past, immediately past state, then it is first order. If it depends upon the past two states of the system, then it is second order, and so on. So the change actually implies Markov property. And as I told you, some people will tell, okay, the future system present on the depends on the present, but in this class we'll have this convention: the present system depends on the previous. It's all one and the same. So in other words, in probabilistic term, this means you give me whatever the past state of the system. The present state will not depend on any of these st minus 2, st minus 3 up to s1. It depends only on st minus 1. So that's what, in simple terms, all these things denote. This is first order Markovian. Okay. And my mother used to tell, okay, so don't sleep immediately after eating, which means this can be thought of as a Markov chain itself. So there are three states of being. Okay, you can be in either of the three states. You can be in sleep state, or you'll be working, or you'll be eating. So this is like when you are eating, I mean, take the time interval over which, I mean, the distance between two sample is like 5 minutes or something. So you'll eat for 20 minutes, which means this will have some probability. When you are presently eating, for next time instant also, you will most likely be eating. Next time instant also, you will most likely be eating. Then after some 20 minutes or so, that is after 4 time instants, you will not be in the state. You might go to work because you will not be sleeping, because the edge joining this and this has probability 0, which means there is no edge. And if you are working, you will continuously work. Then after that, if you feel tired, you will go to sleep, and so on. So this, yes, there are, but it's so. So these are some of the states where a person can be, and this is a dynamical system. And this is one example where it has a special name. This is called as an ergodic Markov chain, which means it has a property of ergodicity. Maybe for ergodicity, by dictionary, what it means is, over time, somehow the system will impinge on all the states. Only that is ergodicity. But in terms of Markov chain, ergodicity means that, as well as the transition probabilities and whatever the probabilities that are associated with this model will converge to certain value. So you have to have both these properties for a Markov chain to be called as an ergodic process. So, but dictionary definition of ergodicity is only the previous definition. It should impinge on all the states. So why? Because I'll tell you, you can call this also as an ergodic process. If you just go by the definition of the dictionary, just a simple left to right model is also, because it impinges on all the states. But I mean, as per the statisticians who have given name for these kind of process, this will not have a convergent density. Whatever the probabilities associated with each of these things will not converge to certain value over time. If you repeat this process some 1 lakh times or 2 lakh times or something, somewhere it will go away. It won't be in that state with this probability, and so on. Okay. So that is how should view. So we should not use dictionary definition for ergodicity in this case. It is both that as well as over time it should converge to certain value. Okay. So here in hidden Markov model, the states are not directly observable. Earlier we saw about Markov model. In this case, in hidden Markov model case, the states are not directly observable. That's what you have the system. I don't know when you start the system, it will be in some state, and in the next dimension it will go to some state. Okay, and so on. So that's why I have put question marks on all the state realizations. So I don't know which state it is, but it had given me some vector. I don't know which state this is, but it had given me x2, and so on. Now, there are some problems that you have to deal with in HMM, like given the data, okay, how do I compute that the data is generated from this model, or given the model, given the data, what are the parameters of this model, or given the model, what is the likelihood that this data might have been generated from this model, and given the data and the model, I want to know, okay, so these are question marks, I wanted to fill values in this. So what value should I fill? Whether it should be A or B or C or what. So these are the three main problems in HMM. One is likelihood evaluation problem, the other one is parameter estimation problem, the other one is most likely state sequence decoding problem. Okay. So, and I'll tell you, it is a bit difficult to find the most likely state decoding. That problem is a bit tricky, because if you have 3 states and the model is generating some 20 samples, okay, then you will have 3 power 20 combinations of this state sequence, and you have to evaluate the likelihood of this data over all these state sequence. So it's a combinatoric explosion. Okay, the explosion happens. Okay, so it is a bit difficult, and even the data likelihood computation is also a big problem in this case. Even there, the explosion happens. Why? Because I know that this data is generated from this model. In case of the data, how to compute the likelihood from this model, I know this data is generated from this model, and I need to know its likelihood, that's all. It can be generated by any sequence. Similarly, okay, the same thing, 320 sequence, 3 power 20 sequences are there. Now you have to calculate how likely, okay, let's number them 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, okay. So let's call it as x something. So this is one such sequence, A, B, A, some 20 values will be there because it's 20, and B, A, something, and so on. Now you calculate the likelihood of the data x1 to xn coming from this sequence. It will have some value, okay, let's call this. Then from this sequence, it will have some value. Then from this sequence, and so on. Okay, so you have all such values. Sum all these values together. Okay, that value is nothing but whatever the data likelihood given the HMM model. And we find the maximum of this. Okay, argmax of this. Okay, if this is the maximum value, then what is that particular state sequence which generated this data? So that is your this optimal state sequence decoding problem. Okay, so these two problems are having this combinatoric explosion problem. So there are some good techniques to find that. Okay. And in the above example, I have given an ergodic HMM, but usually in speech recognition, people use this left to right HMM models. That is, it starts from the first state and it can stay in the first state for some time, or it can go to the next state. Once it went to B, it will never come back to A. So on, this is how the left to right headed Markov model operates. In speech, we prefer this because we pronounce the words or phones in a word or sentences in a sequential way. Okay, and every phone, because and even HMM is not modeled at word level or even at sentence level. It's at phone level only. Even in phone, when you are pronouncing a phone, there will be a rising transition when you pronounce a. Okay, for example, amma. Okay, so when you are pronouncing that ma from a to there will be a transition. Okay, so the characteristics of your feature vector will change. The change will be prominent. Okay, so it will not look like the steady state, or it will not look like a also. It will not look like both a and ma. It will be somewhat intermediate. So that also have to be modeled. So that interval where the rising transition happens, that is called as rising transition interval. And when it's stable, when you're pronouncing that sound, that is where you have stabilized your vocal tract, okay, and producing constantly over time. That is stable state. And when you are pronouncing the next amma, that to a, that is falling transition. So everything is done. Everything is pronounced in a sequential way. So that is why this will pronounce a to this is a stable state, and this is a falling transition state. You can think of it in this way as well. Okay.
In each state,
Sorry.
some samples may be common,
Yeah.
right? In each state.
Samples in the sense, there are no samples in the state. The samples are generated from the state, by the state.
But suppose for each state we have something, right? Some model or something.
Yes.
So there must be some common things between A, B, and B, C, because exactly we don't know the transition thing, right? You cannot map the boundary, right?
Yeah, you can't exactly map the boundary, but that is what, as these model parameters are learned from the data, you have the data, and if the training algorithm finds enough difference in the data such that the model transition happens, during testing also your data will be almost same like training data only, right? Even there you will find that, and you will have that. Okay. So we have seen the model. Okay, it has some nodes and some edges and so on. And one more very important thing which I want to tell. I told you this is a HMM, but this is HMM for electrical engineers, not for computer science engineers. Okay, so computer science engineers, when I talked about PGMs, that is a computer science topic. Okay, but here the nodes and edges are different. Okay, actually, if you want to represent it as a probabilistic graphical model, it will look like this. You have a variable z, and you have a variable x, and you have a variable theta, and the theta will, and this, and okay, this is how HMMs are represented. Okay, some people may even unfold this plate and write it like this: z1, x1, because I don't know how to have loop to it. Okay, so I just added like this, but most people usually write it like this. And so on. Okay, this is how HMM is represented in terms of PGM as a probabilistic graphical model this, by computer sciences. This is how electrical science engineers are familiar with. This is how it functions. What you can say, this is the structure of HMM, and this is the yes, that is the structure of the HMM, and this is the function of the HMM. Okay, you can think of it in that way. Okay, so you can see that. Okay, see, your present data depends on maybe this also. So your present data depends on the latent variable associated at that time as well as the parameters, okay, and the latent variable depends upon the previous latent variable z0, only on the previous latent variable. So that is how this is represented. Because once I had an argument with one computer science, I mean she was a student of Chiranjeev sir. So she was telling, okay, this is HMO. Okay, she was telling this is HMO and so on. Yeah, so that's why I have to make that clear. Okay, sometimes if people tell this is HMO, you should accept it. Okay, so. We have seen the HMM, and now what are the parameters associated with the HMM? HMMs have let's and they'll have something like this. Let's call ergodic HMM. Okay. So each edge will have some probability, okay, because with that probability it can stay in this edge. At this probability it can move from this state to this state, and this is nothing but the probability that it can move from here to here and so on. So all these probabilities, all these edges will have some probability, something. So you just stack all these probabilities in a matrix. So that is your A vector. This row will tell you the values of the edges which are going out from state 1. Okay. Next will tell you the values associated with the edges going out from state 2 and so on. It should somehow go to some state at some time. So if you sum all these things in a row, it should be 1. Because when it is in a particular state, and if it has 3 output nodes, output arcs, then 0.1, 0.3, and then 0.4, 0.6. All these outgoing arcs should sum to 1 because it should go somewhere. So there is no loss, and I think it should be a proper density. Okay. So each row is a density. Okay. So this matrix, if you stack all these things together, then this matrix is called as transition matrix, whose row sum is 1. And now there is one more parameter called pi. Pi is nothing but initially we don't know, okay, to which state the system will be. So this pi will tell, okay, it can be in first state with probability 0.3, second state with probability 0.4, third state with probability 0.3. So this is nothing but initial state probability. Initially, in which state the system will be. You can tell, okay, it is more likely to be in state B or something. So this pi will tell you about that. And even this should sum to 1. This is a density. Okay. And the third one is each and every state has a distribution associated with it, some density function. Okay. And according to when the system is in that state, according to that density only it emits the data vector x. Okay. So it can be either normal density or discrete density or Gaussian mixture model density, or it can be anything. Okay. So and we should assume some functional form for the density. Just before solving the problem, okay, I will consider, okay, this is Gaussian, something like that. So that the parameters of that density are called as Bi. Actually, the density is Bi. That Bi can have, if it is normally distributed, if Bi is normal, then you will have, and if there are 3 states A, B, C, then mu A sigma A, mu B sigma B, mu C sigma C. These are the parameters. Okay, you should replace this that BI with this set of parameters. Okay, I just wrote BI because just it is a density associated with that, and when it is in the set theta, that BI actually means the parameters associated with that BI. You should think of it in that way. Okay, maybe I'll change that theta. Okay.
You are saying we have initial probability. That itself implies that our HMM is ergodic.
No, it is not ergodic.
Because in ergodic, after some time, the probabilities will converge. So basically, that probabilities only we take as the probability of being in that state, or we can say initial probability.
No, yeah, even I have a question. I'll check up with that later. Okay. Yeah, you're telling that the steady state, when the HMM is in steady state, whatever the probability that you count, okay, how many instances that is, that is, no, I don't think that will be initial state. That is like,
I think that is we call it initial state because
yeah,
after
if it is same, then it is ergodic.
yeah,
Okay, if it is same, then it is ergodic. Okay.
it's initial probability
And the steady state.
when they are same,
Yeah,
then it is
then it is
then
ergodic.
in this case
Because no, in this case it is not because no, this I am talking HMM in terms of ergodic HMM only now. Okay, but you can have the same probability, or because you need infinite amount of time to calculate that parameter. Okay, but here if it is finite amount of time, and mostly we'll be dealing with left to right HMMs, and so we can usually ignore the effect of pi. Okay, so as I told you that there are some 3 problems in HMM, and the first problem is, given the data, the HMM model had generated the data, and I wanted to find how likely is the data coming from that model. Okay. In the previous lecture, we have seen the same problem. Okay. In ML estimation, okay, we have to find the likelihood of the data given the model. What did we do? We assumed some model, either Gaussian or Gaussian mixture model. In this case, it is HMM. We were given IID samples in that case. In this case, we are given Markovian data samples. I don't know whether Markovian is a proper adjective to denote data samples, but it's quite appealing. So we'll use it. Okay. So which means earlier, okay, we can swap the order of the samples, but now we can't swap because it has dependencies. The data sample have dependencies, so we should keep the order intact. And earlier, what did we do? We had, if it was Gaussian, we know that the f of x given theta is nothing but that 1 by root 2 pi exponential minus 2 pi minus half sigma square x minus mu square. We had a closed form expression for that, but in HMM we don't have such closed form expression, and even if it is impossible to have any such closed form expression because of these reasons. So we need to consider all possible initial state. It can either be in the first state, in the first time instant, it can be in A, B, or C, and if it is somehow in A, it can go to B, it can go to C, or it can stay in A, and all such combinations are possible, and all transition states are possible. So it's
first 2 lines are only sufficient.
okay. Okay. So we don't have to scratch our head. We can do it recursively. Okay. Instead of finding a closed form expression, we can have a recursive expression. Okay. So in that case, okay, computer science wins over mathematics. Okay. So so the answer can be obtained by using lattices. Okay, so the likelihood values can be easily calculated from the lattices. So what are lattices? I have given. I have a model which is like this. A, B. I mean, I have a picture of that. Okay, so it's better I'll show. So lattices are nothing but graphs which are obtained after unraveling the states over whatever the time interval which is of interest. This is a lattice. Okay, so we have this HMM A, B, C which are connected and so on. Maybe I'll have interconnections. So at time instant 1 we have these 3 states, at time instant 2 we have these 3 states, and it can go from this to this, A to A to B, A to C, B to A, B to B, B to C, and all these connections are there, and each connection will have a value. Okay, each edge will have a value associated with whatever the value we have in the model. If C to C is 0.1, then C to C edge will have a value 0.1 and so on. So all these edges, you fill those edges, the number associated with each edge, by looking at this structural model. Okay, and you copy these edges here, 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 and so on, because the transition probability doesn't change at all. So it's same. Now using this is called as lattice. Using this, and we are interested in the samples x1 to xn. So our interval of interest is 1 to n. So we just unravel and extend these lattice to n time instant. N is equal to 1 to n is equal to n. Now this is obtained. Now from this we can easily calculate the data likelihood, the p of x given theta. So as I told you that the algorithm to compute this data likelihood is forward backward algorithm. So it is an efficient way to calculate this p of x given theta. Earlier I used to denote this x1 to xn as a multiset which is D. I don't know, in this slide I have not used the same notation as the previous slides, but anyway, bear with me that I think you will understand, because I have used some of these notations in the previous lectures, so it will be okay. So, so what does P of the likelihood of data contain? Okay, so P of D is nothing but x1, x2, x3 up to xn given whatever the theta, which is nothing but and it is a bit easier to calculate P of x 1 to xn and so on into this SS means state sequence. Okay, for a particular state sequence I can calculate the likelihood. Okay, but this is a joint density, and this contains only x1 to xn. So what do we do? We just normalize, marginalize over all the state sequence. So this capital SS is a power set over all the states. Okay, so if ns is the number of state, then SS is nothing but the power set of and n is the number of samples. So this is the set SS. Okay, and so capital SS, and small SS is some element in this capital SS. That's what this means. And we know that, okay, through Bayes rule, okay, we can split this as split this joint as conditionals. P of x given SS theta and to P of SS given theta. Okay. Now we'll see what these two terms are. Okay, so P of SS, sorry, this should be given theta. Okay, I messed it up. So P of SS is nothing but, so what is SS? SS is an element in this, one of the element in this power set, which is a long sequence of vector, okay, an n length sequence, okay. So small SS is nothing but a set. It can be like A, B, A, C, and so on, of length n. Okay. Now I wanted to know whether this HMM, what is the probability that I will not erase this. Okay. A, B, and C. So what is the probability that a short sequence, let's so let's keep n as 6. So a short sequence like this, what is the probability that this HMM will be in at first time instant, it will be in first state, and then go to A, and then go to B, go to A, and then C, and A, and then B. So we know that about initial probability. So if it should be, it should be in A for the first time instant, which is associated with pi A, and the next time instant it should go from A to B, which is nothing but this edge's probability, A, AB, and it should go from B to A again, that is this edge. So A, B, A, and then A to C, that is this edge probability. AC, and so on, AC, CA, NAV. Okay, you got it right. So that's what this means. Okay, where Sn minus 1 is nothing but what is the previous state, what is the ID of the previous state, and Sn is nothing but what is the ID of the present state. So that's what this means. So we got the probability of the state sequence given the parameter. Now the other term we have to get, probability of the data given the state sequence and the parameter, that is P of D given SS theta. So we are given, okay, this is the state sequence. I want to know what is the probability that the data is coming from this state, from the first vector is coming from this state, and second from this, and third from this, and fourth from this, and so on. So as I told you, you can intuitively tell that okay, it is a product of all these things. And let's see the conditional independence in terms of conditional independence point of view. When you are given the state sequence, the data points no longer follow the Markovian assumption. Okay, they are IID in that case. Okay.
So the data sample from B doesn't depend on the previous state.
Given the state sequence, given the state sequence, you know this, these are the state sequence. Okay, this is the state sequence that is fixed. Okay. Now I want to know what is the probability that first vector comes from A, comes from the this state, second vector coming from this state, third vector coming from this state. So that so those values are independent. So then given the state sequence, given I know this vector had generated, because this is what we okay, maybe GMM is a different case. Okay, yes, okay. So as I told you earlier that B denotes a distribution. When we in parameter set theta it was B, but in rest of the cases, rest of the place, B denotes a density as such. So which means P of the data, that is x1 to xn, given the state sequence, that state sequence is this. Okay, let's call it as SS, and the parameter theta, which is nothing but the first sample coming from A means the density of A generating x1 into density of B generating x2 and so on up to density of B generating xn, x6. Okay, whatever. So this is what this is nothing but product of all the individual marginals. Okay. Okay. So now substitute this and that in this equation. It's a simple term. Okay. So over all these things, pi comes here. P of x. This one. We see here. The initial state is given. Okay. So it is specified by the initial state probability, the first state. And so the product is over 2 to n. And here it is 1 to capital N. So just to club the terms properly, we take one of this thing outside and just keep it in this form. Okay, so this is what. Now where did one more B go? That B is nothing but this one. Actually, I should have written it as B1 next one. Okay, so it can also be written. Okay, so anyway, you got it. So we have to compute this term. Okay, as I told you, this has to be summed over all possible state sequence. That is this power set S. So explosion happens. We don't have to find that. Okay, instead we will do something. Okay, that is what the forward backward algorithm tells. It asks us to define two recursive variables. One is alpha t, alpha nj, and the other is beta nj. Alpha is forward variable and beta is backward variable. Where this alpha nj, this alpha is a big, it's a matrix actually. Alpha is a matrix. And what will be the number of rows of the matrix? Row means, okay, this is column. Okay, the length of this is number of states, and this is n. Okay, so this is, it's ns cross n. Ns is number of state and n is number of sample. So alpha is a big matrix, and even beta is also a big matrix like this. Okay, the same shape. Alpha and j tells that what is the probability, that is this each entry of the matrix will tell what is the probability that x1, x2, x3 up to xn, up to that particular time, this data is generated by the model, and after generation it comes to jth state. Okay, that is what alpha denotes, alpha nj denotes, and beta nj denotes given okay, sorry, okay, and which means nth state is state j is generating xn. Okay, and beta denotes the other way. Okay, beta nj tells me after n, whatever the samples we have, xn plus 1, xn plus 2, xn plus 3, and so on up to the last sample xn is generated by the HMO model, and at the nth time instant it is in state j. Okay, so beta is this probability. Okay, and as it is a recursive variable, and it is a simple recursion relation. I don't want to prove this. Okay, it's a simple. If you are good in these kind of analytics, you can prove this easily. So if I am given that, okay, I up to n minus 1 for all j, okay, if I know this value, you can calculate alpha and j by just looking at the transition only from the n minus 1 state, by just multiplying the path probabilities, and it ends in the jth state. So that is how this will be. And as it is a recursive relation, okay, we have to define the initial condition. Okay, so alpha 1 is the initial probability, and the emission probability of every state, the first vector generating jth state. Okay, and similarly, even for beta, the initial condition is beta n j will be 1, because it somehow ends at n state. So that is for sure. So that is why it is 1. Okay, so just by computing this alpha and beta, and it is very simple to compute this recursive relation, because at every time instant you need to compute only ns number of computations. Okay, so to compute this, you need to compute only ns computation, and so on. So ns into ns into ns. So this is the complexity of the system. But in the earlier case, it was ns power n. Okay, so it's huge. Now somehow we have got we have simplified this relation. So so as I told you,
I didn't understand actually. NS into NS into NS.
see, I'll tell you. Okay, we have to fill this table, and as I gave you the initial condition, initial conditions are there. That is nothing but the first row. I have filled the first row. Now I have to compute the second row. Okay, which means what? Second row's first entry is x1 has been generated, and x2 is generated by the first state, and it falls there. That's all. Which means what? X1 has already been generated by this. Now look at the lattice here. Okay, x1 is generated, and it would have been generated by the first state, or second state, or third state, and then it would have jumped to the first state, and then it would have jumped from first state, and then it would have jumped from first state. What do you have to do? You know, you have this value. Okay, multiply this with this, multiply this with this, multiply this with this, add all the multiplied values. That is what you will get as this. Okay, so how many computations are there in this? 3. Okay, because there are 3 states. Okay, so ns computation for one entry. So how many such entries we have? ns minus 1 into n, you can tell. Okay, because these are already filled. Okay, so but the order is ns minus, sorry, ns into n. Okay, the order of complexity is ns into n, which is ns square n. Okay, and similarly beta also, it should be viewed in from that way. Okay, so by mathematics, I told you it's a bit difficult to derive that because of the combinatoric explosion problem. We can't get a closed form solution, and that's why we wanted some answer, but this forward backward algorithm gave us n answers. Okay, you can compute the likelihood by any one of these formulas. So there is one formula here, there is one formula here, there are n minus 2 formulas here. Okay, so either of these formulas will work. Okay, any questions on this formula? These are very easy to compute. You just I'll tell you one example. Okay, this is an example. Okay, the shades are proper. Okay, see, alpha, as I told you, alpha nj, let's consider this as n as 3. Okay, in this case n as 3, and for the figure shown, j is b. Okay, n as 3 and j is b. So x1 to x3 has been generated, and x3, and it falls in the second state. So alpha n will tell you the emission probability of x1 to x3 and x3 is generated by beat state, that is alpha 3 of b. Okay, and beta will tell you uh, from x4 to whatever the last sample, what is the probability of that sequence of feature vector generated by this state. Okay, that is beta 3 of b. Now this is one possible sequence. The nth data point, that is the third data point, is generated by B, but it can be generated by A also, and it can be generated by C also. So that's why if you sum over all the states, okay, it can be generated by B, or it can be generated by A, or which is plus, it can be generated by C. Okay. So it is nothing but alpha nj beta nj, this product summed over the j. Okay. So that is this formula. Okay. Now, okay, we solved the first problem, which is a model is given, a data is given. How likely is that data coming from that model? Now, I know the structure of the model. Okay, it has some A, B's, and Pi's. I don't know its value, and I know I have some data. Now I need to estimate the parameters of the model from the given data. So how do we do that? Okay, as I told you, it is a hidden, it's a latent variable problem. So we have to use expectation maximization algorithm, and the simplest form ML case will deal. Okay, will not, because HMM in map case will be a bit more involved. So I'll not take that. We'll stick with only ML, and this procedure is also known as Baum-Welch estimation. Okay, so EM procedure, what this is just a recap of whatever we have seen until now. What do? We assume some initial parameter for theta. Let's call it as theta k, and we obtain the Q function, which is nothing but expectation over z given x theta k over the joint density of random variable, the hidden random variable and the observed data, and that is nothing but your Q function, and we maximize the Q function with respect to whatever the parameters that you wanted to find. And with the optimal parameter obtained at this step, you assume that as theta k and obtain the Q function and maximize it, and with that new theta you construct a new function, and this has to be iterated again and again. We saw that figure, right? Okay, so the likelihood function was very non-convex, and we chose a point and we approximated, because this Q function is a good, nice convex function. So we can find its minima easily. Okay, and keeping that minima as theta, you shift and reach a local maxima, actually not minima. Okay, local maxima. I'll correct it. Okay, local maxima. It is guaranteed because at every step you will find increase in the likelihood value. Okay, so let's compute that Q function. Before that, we'll see what earlier we saw the hidden random variable was for GMM case, this Z was nothing but it will tell you from which mixture the data was from. That is what we had, right? Z was in GMM case. Maybe I'll draw parallel between GMM and HMM, and just to explain this latent variable. Okay, so we had x1, we had x2, and so on up to xn. Okay, these are the data samples, and each data sample had a latent variable z1, z2 up to zn. Okay, k mixtures. So each data point will have a latent variable, and that latent variable is nothing but a vector of k dimension. If the GMM is k mixture, then it will have k dimension, and only one of the entry will be 1, and the rest will be 0. So it should sum to 1. This is the form of hidden variable that we had. This is called as Multinolly density. Okay, you can call it as. Similarly, for HMM case also, let's have k states. We have x1, and for that x1 we have z1, and x2 we have z2, and so on. For xn we have zn, and each latent variable is nothing but a vector of length. How many states do we have? And it will tell you, and even in this case it is a Multinolly variable, where only one of the entry will be 1 and the rest will be 0. Okay. In this case, we wanted the latent variable to capture the information about that vector coming from which of the component of the mixture. In this case, it will tell you from which state that vector might have come from. Okay, so that is what we wanted the z variable to capture. Okay. Okay, and the q function is nothing but we have seen this expression in p of xz given theta in the previous slides, right? Just substitute that one here. And okay, now I mean I have repeated that again. This now what we do is we take this expectation inside. Okay, so this expectation is taken with respect to the density p of z given x theta k. Okay, so z follows this kind of a Multinolly density. Okay, so only one of the entries 1, the rest all 0. In GMM case, when we summed over all the sequences, when we summed over all the z's, that summation is over all vectors of z, all possible vectors of z, and we take it inside. It is no more a sum over z, it became a sum over mixture. Okay, because for every sum, only one of the term will be non-zero, the rest will be 0. So that's why the sum over z had become sum over the mixture. Okay, that is m. Even in this case, the same applies. Okay. So here, when we take the expectation inside, we have this. Okay, we have a log here. So when we take the sum inside, when we take this expectation inside, it will be this p of z is equal to ss, means ss is a sequence, and z is nothing but the vector z1, z2, z3 up to zn. Okay. When I meant z equal to ss, ss is nothing but the small ss is nothing but one element in the power set ss. Okay, so which is nothing but a sequence. Okay, which is nothing but some n-length sequence. Okay, so this capital SS is nothing but ns over n. So and SS is one realization of this capital SS, and this is nothing but some vector which we have. So AB, 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 and so on, something C. And when I mean z equal to this long vector, what I meant was if the first state is A, then only the first entry should be 1 and the rest all should be 0. Okay. If it is B, then the second entry should be 1, the rest all should be 0. Okay. If the last one is C, then the last one should be 0, then 1 and the rest should be 0. So this is what equality means. We are not comparing. It is not a direct comparison. It's just you should understand. You should relate it in that way. And the rest are all simple. You have a product term. Take log inside. It will turn to sum, and we have a log pi here, and so on. So you can see that we know that HMM has three parameters. One is initial state, and one is transition. One is the parameters mu and sigma. Okay, the state densities parameters. Okay, that is the BJ's parameters, and everything is related. I mean, both all are combined by a sum. So when you take derivative, if you want to calculate the parameter pi, you have to take derivative of this function with respect to pi. And when you take the derivative with respect to pi, only this term remains. These terms get vanished. Okay. So what we can do is, we don't have to involve those terms in the q function also. So that's why there is a slight difference between difference in the notation. Instead of calling this q function with respect to the general parameters at theta theta k, we'll call with respect to the parameter of interest. Okay. Here, if we wanted to calculate pi, we calculate the we just keep the terms which have dependency only on pi. As I told you, only this term has dependency on pi, so keep only that term here. Okay. You can see the summation over SS had turned to summation over J. So why is it? Why has it turned to J? See, SS is a sequence. Okay, and SS is a sequence which out of which this pi is related to the initial state probability. Okay, which means whatever the sequence that you have, okay, you don't care about any of these. So SS can be this vector. So we have ns power n such vectors. Okay, and if I wanted to calculate the initial probability, you don't care about any of these states at all. You are interested in only the first state. So that's why out of all the possible entries of SS, okay, you are taking only the first element. So that is why the first hidden variable, what is the probability that it comes from the jth state, and whatever the log pi that you have. Okay, so you can see that, okay, in GMM case we had some term here, and it was multiplied by some term inside a summation. So we call that term as gamma ij, right? Okay, so that is nothing but we called it as some mixture posterior. Okay, posterior. And similarly, we in this case we'll call it as initial state posterior. We'll give a symbol which is gamma ij, 1j. Okay, this gamma and that gamma is nowhere related. This is for GMM case we call it as mixture posterior. We had some similar form, and we had a way to compute this posterior. What does this posterior actually mean? What is the probability that the ith vector coming from jth mixture component? Okay, so that is what in GMM this gamma meant. In case of HMM, what is the probability that the jth state is the first state in the sequence? Okay, so that is what the gamma here means, and that gamma is called as initial state posterior. And similarly, for the next parameter A, that is the transition probability, we keep only the terms which have dependency on A. So that is, we have only this term. Okay, so in this case we have two summations. because we have we are hopping from one state to the other state, that is ASN minus 1 to SN. Okay, so that is why this whatever the state sequence you have, this will be a summation of n length. So in that you keep only the two lengths whichever there. So that is the ith length and the jth length, and the I can be any of the state and j also can be any of the state. So it just sum over it, and whatever the expression we have here, it is called as zeta n ij. So that is nothing but transition posterior, that we call as transition posterior. And similarly for the mean and covariance parameters, we keep only the terms in the Q function which has dependency on mu and sigma, which is only the last term. We just keep it here. N is a shorthand notation for normal density, so just keep it. And we have this term P of Zn is equal to I given d and theta k. Even this can be called as a posterior, and its name is state posterior. We'll denote it as gamma only because we have run out of variables. This gamma and that gamma is different because it has an index 1 and there it is n. Okay, so this is called as state posteriors. Okay, so now the next thing is we have got the Q function. Now we have to take derivative of this Q function with respect to derivative of this Q function with respect to pi, and this Q function with respect to aij, and this Q function with respect to mu, as well as with respect to sigma, and set them to 0, and then calculate the pi star, a star, mu star, and sigma star. So that will be your optimal parameter. And there is one more thing. In case of GMM, there was a way to calculate this gamma ij. Okay, the posteriors are calculated in this way. So the it is nothing but whatever the normal density of the jth component generating this xi divided by first component generating xi plus second component generating xi, and so on up to whatever the k components that we had. Okay, this is how we had calculated the posterior for GMM. Okay, this is for GMM. It's called as mixture posterior. That time we called. But to compute the state posterior, we have not found a way to calculate the state posterior. In the next class, we'll see how to calculate the state posterior, transition posterior, and initial state posterior. Okay. So, and apart from that, and after that, we'll then compute the maxima of the Q function of each of the 4 Q functions, and we have just taken the state distribution. We have taken the state distribution to be a simple normal density. Instead, we'll take a bit more complicated ones like discrete density and GMM. I don't think you have heard about discrete density, right? I'll talk about it also because it involves a bit like k-means and so on. Okay, and one more most important thing is, so we have seen up to now 2 problems. Okay, we have seen 1.5 problems up to now. The first one is forward backward algorithm to compute the data likelihood, and the half what we have seen is to get the parameters theta given the data, and the third problem which we'll be seeing next at the end of next class is to get the optimal state sequence given the data and the model. Okay, so that is also a combinatoric explosion problem. So we'll use the same alpha, beta, and the lattice and all this thing to do Viterbi decoding. So one more small detail I'll tell. See, in case of GMM, if I have this sample x1, x2, x3 up to xn, and you have computed the posteriors of the sample, that is this vector you have calculated. Okay, which will tell you what is the probability that this vector coming from the first mixture What is the probability that second it is coming from this x1 is coming from second mixture, and so on up to kth mixture. Okay, it all has some value 0.1, 0.3, something. It should sum to 1 because it's a density, posterior density. Now, if I ask you, given this posterior density, if I ask you which mixture component would have generated x1, what will you tell?
Whatever is the, you cannot say, right? Or we can say which mixture has maximum.
Which mixture has the maximum probability? If it is 0.3 and the rest are all 0.01, 0.03 and so on, then okay, it is generated from the second mixture. Okay, you can easily tell just by looking at the posterior. Similarly, we had the posteriors for this one, whatever the state posteriors and the this thing gamma, T, J, N, J that we had. This is state posteriors, right? Okay, which will tell me what is the probability that nth jth state had generated the nth vector. That's what this means, right? So just by looking at the state posteriors, we can find out the state sequence, right? No, we can't, because of the Markovian assumption. Because it doesn't, here it assumes that okay, the data is fixed, okay, there are no other samples. But Markovian assumption tells what? Whatever the previous sample, whatever the present sample, they all have dependence, right? So it is not as straightforward as just looking at the posterior probability. Okay, they're getting those alignments. Alignment means nothing but state sequence. Okay, so I often use the word alignments, okay, interchangeably, state sequence as alignments. So it should be done through some special dynamic programming method. So that is Viterbi decoding. It's not as straightforward as in the case of GMO. Okay, so that's all. Thank you. Stop.